Council and Urban Renewal Agency meeting for April 26, 2021. We have a declaration of quorum, all members present. Good to see everybody this evening. Please join me in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any changes to this evening's agenda?
No.
Okay. So we're at the first item on our agenda, which is citizen input on non-agenda items. I saw Fire Chief Scott Stanton out there. I asked him to come this evening and kind of give us an update about what he's got going on and what the bond levy is and all that sort of stuff. Appreciate you being here tonight.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council members and staff. Again, Scott Stanton with the Umatilla County Fire District Number 1, 320 South First here in Hermiston. Yeah, so about 18 months ago, the Board of Directors and myself, we started talking about how do we handle our capital expenditures as far as logistics of stations, replacement of apparatus, rescue equipment, that kind of stuff. Prioritizing, of course, our first responders' health and safety. And they finally came to the decision with some cost and benefit analysis this spring that we need to do something different. And talking with our folks at SDEO, which is Special Districts of Oregon, they decided to put a bond measure on the May ballot. So kind of go over that real quickly. It's about $13.1 million, which on that, on say evaluate the house that's got a valuation of about $200,000 is about $46 a year, and that's about a cup of coffee a month. And that was a big priority for the Board of Directors. They wanted something that was manageable and that was cost management for folks, and they felt that that was the ballpark where we wanted to be in. It was no more than 25 cents a thousand over the life of the bond, so that's where we ended up. So starting off, kind of what the board would like to do with the money. Obviously, is protect our first responders, health and safety first and foremost. We understand that if we can't keep our first responders healthy and safe, they can't keep our community members healthy, safe. So responding to those medical emergencies, fire rescues. So that's the number one thing there. We want to do is upgrade our personal protective equipment for wildland and structure fires. Upgrade our portable radio system and add enough portable radios for everybody to have. Communication is always the first thing that breaks down on a big fire scene, so it's important that we have portable radios for all the folks. Some ambulance load systems. I don't know if you know the number one injury for firefighters are back injuries. And where we run the ambulance service, of course, we're lifting patients. A lot of patients are pretty heavy nowadays in the United States. And what these load systems do are when you hook your gurney up to it, they automatically put it in. And it does a couple things. First of all, it saves a lot of back strains and injuries, and like in the COVID world, we only have to have one medic now exposed. So one medic can push it up, click it in, and run it. Versus right now, it always takes two people. So many reasons to do that. And then lastly, cancer. Firefighters are 3 times more likely to get cancer than the regular American. So we're going to do a bunch of stuff for cancer prevention. One of them is put diesel exhaust systems on some of our older apparatus. And the second is try to build some turnout rooms so the turnouts are out of the apparatus bays in their own ventilated room so they can be stored better and cleaned better. So those are some of the, like I say, that's some of the stuff that we want to take care of our first responders. Second, we want to ensure reliable service and response times for our folks. We need to update our district-wide total alert systems in all our stations so that we're getting total alerted to go on those emergencies properly and at the right times to get our folks out the door, because that's important to get on the road to get to those emergencies. It's going to, over that period, about 7 or 8 years, we're not going to spend all the money at once. We don't want all the apparatus to expire or become obsolete or run down at the same time. So over that first 7 or 8 years, we're going to replace ambulances. We're going to replace some engines, like our oldest structure engine right now is 1989 model. That's about 32 years old. It needs replaced. Our oldest brush engine is a 1990. That's 31 years old. It's the time we have some stuff to replace. We need a new ladder truck, because our newest ladder truck is 20 years old now. The National Fire Protection Association, which is the national standard for fire services, the national standard for replacing like ladder trucks and engines every 10 years. Obviously, we're never going to be able to do that, but we need to do a better job of replacing some of that stuff that's really old. Start talking 25, 30 years plus, we've got to take care of that. And then kind of one of the last things is taking care of for our future growth and taking care of some facility work. I'm proud to say we have 2 female firefighter paramedics on staff now, but some of the stations that were built in the 70s and 80s don't always meet the needs of male and females both when they're living together 48 hours at a time. So we're going to remodel some stations. We're not building anything new, just remodeling and renovating stations. We need a couple new roofs. The roof at the safety center over the bays is 50 years old now this year. It was built in 1971 from a bond that was passed by the city in 1970. So we need a new roof on that. We need another roof on a 35-year-old station out of Diagonal. So those are probably big ticket items. As well as replace some outdated rescue equipment. The stuff we use to cut people out of cars is almost 20 years old as well. And we're amazed, my staff and I, is how quick time has flown by because it seemed like we just got that stuff new. But it's been a little bit. And then of course stuff like cardiac monitors. You know, 90% of our calls are EMS. We know that's a big deal, so we want to keep on top of that technology for EMS equipment, such as cardiac monitors. Some of the last pieces of that, you know, we're going to also have a ladder truck and an engine we're going to send down to get refurbished instead of brand new. We can get that done for about half price. We've checked out the place that's outside in Hermiston, Nevada. Does a great job, and I think that's also a good, wise move for taxpayers' money, not to just buy everything new. We can have it refurbished for half price, and it basically becomes new again as far as NFPA is considered. The last big part of that is consolidation debt service payments for us, and that's going to save us $232,000 a year in debt service. That's a big deal too to us. And then lastly, we're creating an oversight committee made up of citizens throughout the district, so they can help monitor us, make sure we're spending the money wisely. That if the bond passes, if the voters are generous enough to do that, we want an oversight committee to help us frame that and how we go forward with spending that money properly and be transparent in everything we do. So that's kind of it. It just setting us up for success for the future, not only then and but today. And that's kind of where we're sitting with the bond and what we want to spend the money for. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. Do you have a second for questions?
You bet. You bet. Okay.
So one of the questions I had is on bond levy. Can you talk to that about how it impacts other bond levies in the district or in the area?
Well, a bond levy isn't within the compression, so that $10 of government spending, that bond is outside of that, so it'll be extra money that everybody pays equally, just like a school bond or the city passed a bond or any special district or the county, Blue Mountain, whatever. It's just everybody would pay that. There's nobody that gets more or less or pays more or less. It's strictly based off their valuation of the property.
Gotcha. So no impacts to city governments or county governments or school districts. This is outside of that.
No impacts to anybody else. No.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like a lot of valuable resources, a lot of needs within the district. I wish you the best. Do the councilors have any other questions? Yes, Mr. Berman?
Hi, good evening. I had a question more about the radio systems. Tell me, as of this point, is there enough radios for everyone, or tell me a little bit how that works?
So, you know, in Umatilla, Morrow County, we have a radio data district, right? And they just went to a new 700 megahertz system, but they didn't have enough money to get us all the portable radios we need. So this bond is going to help us buy, and they didn't buy us the right radios for firefighters. These are built more for, I don't know, you can see Chip Edmondson's here. They're not built for a firefighter in big gear with these big gloves and these masks on. So we want to buy the ones that are made for firefighters. And they're bigger, but they're twice as much money too. They're about $4,000 to $5,000 a piece, and we want to buy at least 12 of those. So the bond money is going to go, so for some of that, it's going to be the radios built for firefighters.
Thank you. Actually, before this council meeting was starting, I was just kind of telling a little story with some of the other councilors about the importance of communication. Like you were saying with the radios, I was just talking about baseball and my players colliding on a pop fly because they didn't talk. But it's super important to communicate, especially when fires are out of control. That's interesting. You said that's kind of the first thing that goes. So really highlighting the importance of how important it is to communicate. Thank you on that.
Chief, one other question to follow up on the communication issue. Last year we had kind of a wildfire situation happen north of town. and the community got alerted that, hey, be ready to evacuate. So I don't think you put out that notice, but.
No, that would have been through county.
Through the county. So do we have a better way of isolating actual areas to make sure that they're getting alerted? I super appreciate the process and, seeing that emergency notice on my phone, but it also can create a lot of anxiety and hopelessness when you say, hey, you got to get home in 5 minutes. So how is that process? Are we working at getting better at that? And can you explain that a little bit better?
So the county has a system, it's kind of like a reverse 911, right? And they can send out this stuff, and that's through a ringing of a home phone or a text message or cell phones. And I can't speak as a specialist on it. Probably the emergency manager, Tom Rockland County, would be the best person to speak on that. But in essence, and they should be able to say it's just going to be this zip code or this area, and they can actually do that. So Hermiston and Stanfield, and community cities, and then the area around both communities that we provide service to, which is about 210 square miles.
And how many groups have you presented to so far?
Oh, let's see. Been on the radio. I've been to Lions and Rotary.
A lot of
Some, yeah, of course, editorial boards.
Have you heard any concerns about the levy at all?
I have. No, everyone that's come to me, the biggest thing is, hey, what are we spending the money on? Once we give the messages, here's what we're doing with our money, actually I get quite a bit of compliments that we're actually thinking about spending the money wisely, like by refurbishing a couple of rigs. I can refurbish a ladder truck that's 20 years old for about half price, which is about $375,000, $400,000 versus buying another new one for $800,000. An engine I can refurbish for $250,000 or $275,000 versus $600,000 plus for a new engine. So stuff like that. And we're not building new big stations. Pendleton spent $8 or $9 million on just a new station. We're only asking for 13 total, and that's going to help us, get down the road at least the next 10 or 12 years of equipment. So with that, that's the biggest thing I get is mainly once they find the message and they understand what we're trying to do. Most of them are very happy that we're trying to be very transparent and be very mindful and good stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Well, thank you so much, because I know that the work that you do is not just only for fires, but you also do the ambulance runs, and so we appreciate the work. I know that maybe about 3 weeks ago there was a fire over in my neighborhood, so I was like, oh, that was my area. So thankful that you guys run the service, and so I'm glad that you provided us with all of this information should we get asked, and we certainly have more information on it, and we'll pass on any other tough questions that you may not know the answer to you guys.
Yeah, and I can always come back with pleasure with the council.
So one more quick question for me. Is there a place like on your website where somebody directs a question to us and then directly to us? Like, well, here's on your website where everything is itemized and you can see anything about it then?
Yes, there is some websites. I think it's called yeson30-148.com, I think, is the website you can go to. There's also a Facebook page. I think it's up now. And I think our website, I don't know if it might have a link to it or something. But those are websites that the political action committee has put up. So, and then I know mailers are going out. And like I said, we're just trying to get the word out to folks who pay for what we're trying to do, what we're trying to spend the money on.
Counselors, any other questions? Chief Stanton, we appreciate you coming this evening. We appreciate all you and your firefighters do for our community and helping to keep us safe and protected. We appreciate our partnership and relationship very much. So thank you for your service.
All right, thank you.
All right, other citizen input on non-agenda items. Are there people here in the audience tonight that would like to speak to the council? Come on up. Please introduce yourself by name and address, direct your comments to me, and limit your discussion to not more than 5 minutes. Daniel, were you hearing Chief Stanton okay? I don't know if that microphone was on.
The mic's going fine, the video's not working right
Okay.
now. So it's audio's recording though, live. So.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Okay, Lily Gomez, 545 West Ridgeway Avenue. Other nights I'm here as just, citizen wanting to listen on what's going on with our city, but tonight I'm here to introduce myself as Lily Gomez, a school board member candidate. Just a little bit about me. I'm a Hermiston native from the area, went through school here at your school district, K through 12. Had a lot of help, great resources, and I was able to, go to college at first generation college graduates. I attended Seattle University, where I received my position with the Hermiston Municipal Court. So I did that for a while before moving on to where I'm currently at now, the Hermiston Police Department, where I work as a record specialist. And now that I've been back for some time, like I said, I was a former English teacher overseas, and the involvement I have and love I have for the city and this town to grow, it just seemed like the natural next step to serve on our school board. So that's a little bit about me. I guess if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
thank you, Ms. Gomez. We appreciate your willingness to serve the community in a capacity like school board, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Others here this evening who would like to speak? Okay. We're going to move on to our regular agenda. The first items on their agenda to address for the council is the consent agenda, items A through D. Do we need to pull any of those? Seeing none, is there any public comment on consent agenda items A through D? Okay. I'll take a motion to approve consent agenda items A through D.
So, second.
It's been moved by Councilor Primer, seconded by Councilor Davis, to approve consent agenda items A through D. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Public hearing, Mr. Smith, zoning amendment hearing for 157.002 and 157.025B, institutional senior cluster and associated use. That was then rescheduled.
Yes, this is associated with the green property project that we've been discussing, and we had scheduled this action as it came out of the Planning Commission for tonight, but we're asking to just postpone that for a month as we come back and have some more discussion with the council about it.
Thank you. Resolution 2178, adopt sanitary sewer collection system study. For you, Mr. Smith?
I'm going to start. Mark, are you going to lead off?
And I'll do just like you, and I'll hand it off to our consultant. We have Joshua Lott. He's an engineer with Anderson Perry and Associates, and he, along with others at Anderson Perry, worked on developing this sewer collection system study here over the past year or so. This study was presented basically in the form as it is now to the Public Infrastructure Committee back last fall for their review. Then it was subsequently sent up to DEQ for their review. The biggest thing that DEQ needed to review is just to make sure that we're being realistic in our future projections of what we're planning for, because we do access some beneficial financing instruments through DEQ and other sources. So they finally got back to us on approving that here about a month ago, and so now it's up to the council to just adopt this plan basically for building out our collection portion of our sewer system over the next 20 years. So, Mr. Lott, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. So as Mr. Morgan said, we completed this study of the collection system portion of our sanitary sewer system. That does not include the treatment plant. It just includes the portion that collects the wastewater. So as part of that study, as was mentioned, it's a planning document. It's meant to aid the community in helping to know how to best maintain and plan for sewer additions. As part of that, we take the population projections presented by PSU and use those to basically forecast how much wastewater we will expect in any given line over the next 20-ish years. So it's a planning document. It really helps determine a lot of different things. One of the great things about it is it allows us to get in front of a lot of issues. The issue that you don't want is someone calling saying, hey, there's a sewer overflow, and you go and you look and, oh, hey, it's a 60-year-old pipe that's broken, and now it costs a lot of money because you need to call up a contractor and say, hey, we need this fixed right now, and it's Sunday night. So, that's obviously the worst case that could happen, and this document will allow us to identify areas that need correction or aging infrastructure that needs to be planned for and replaced. It just kind of gives us a heads up on where our collection structures lie in terms of aging and ability to perform their job. So a couple of things that I wanted to mention is one of the things that is really critical in a lot of jurisdictions is what we call I&I. That stands for infiltration and inflow. Now, no sewer pipe in the world is 100% sealed after it's aged a little bit. Maybe right when it's built it's perfectly sealed, but very rarely is any pipe perfectly sealed. And so groundwater often infiltrates into our sewer system, which creates issues at the wastewater treatment plant if there's too much, because you're essentially treating groundwater that didn't need to be treated in the first place, right? So one of the things we discovered with this study is that Hermiston does not have a very large issue with that. It's very small to the point where DEQ did not require us to do a further study on that, which means that we don't need to spend money on fixing infiltration and inflow sources, which is great because there are a lot of communities that have very large issues with infiltration and inflow. So I think that goes a lot to say that, the people that have managed our collection system study over the years have done a good job of helping to maintain the system and prevent some of those issues from occurring. The next thing that I wanted to do, I wanted to show you this map. One of the things that we did, and this is probably kind of hard to see because it's supposed to be on a 24 by 36 sheet in front of you, but basically what this is, it's a map of Hermiston, and it is a map of all of your guys' sewer lines in the city. If I just kind of gave you a zoomed in shot here, every one of these lines represents a sewer main, and every one of these little yellow flower looking things represents a sewer manhole. So as part of what we did is the sewer department has lines that they know that they have known issues with. And so what we did is we sent a camera down those lines to take a look at some of these issues. So everywhere you see a bold line, like this guy right here, this black one, this red one, you have some orange ones over here. We sent a television camera down those lines and looked at what those issues were. And let me just zoom back out to that legend again. These colors right here, we kind of classified based on how critical the issue was. So yellow being, hey, there's not that big of an issue, this could probably hold off for quite a while yet. Where red is kind of like, hey, there are definitely some issues that we need to take care of here at that point. So with that, I kind of wanted to show you some pictures, and this is just to kind of get you guys in the mind frame of what some of the worst lines look like in your sewer system. Generally, most of your lines are in a lot better condition than these pictures that I will show you. So keep in mind that generally our system's in really good condition. It is really old in a lot of places. And we definitely didn't send down a camera in every single line. That would be way too much money, and the taxpayers, I mean, that's not a good thing for the taxpayers, right? So what I'm going to do here is we have some pictures, and I'm just going to jump over here to page 220. And I just wanted to show you some of these pictures. So let's zoom in on this guy right here. So I don't know if you guys ever, isn't good. And that's something that we should fix. There are other, this one, maybe that's not as bad because, hey, it's not right where the sewage is flowing out of. So you say, hey, that's something that needs fixed, but maybe we'll push that one further down the road. Whereas something like this, It's like, hey, we need to get that taken care of sooner rather than later. So a couple more pictures. I wanted to show you these. These are actually kind of over by Walmart and McDonald's. And these were all taken in the same 2 pipe sections, I believe. So a lot of these pictures, these black things that you're seeing right here, those are rubber gaskets. Every time you have 2 sewer mains that come together, there's a rubber gasket there that's meant to seal it. You can see that almost every single joint in this pipe was not sealed. And those joints, depending on the pipe type, occur every, I think 18 to 20-ish feet is kind of your standard pipe length. So, and once again, you're seeing some large cavities in the side of your pipe that, so this one was one of the most critical pipes that we found. A lot of the issues in the pipes that we did inspect were just sagging issues, and what that means is the way a sewer pipe usually works is it's a straight shot going downhill. Well, if you have some sags in your pipe, it kind of does this little roller coaster thing going downhill. And if you can imagine the things in your sewer system that might get stuck in a little bit of a low spot, and when that gets stuck, it kind of blocks up the water until the water kind of has enough force to push it through. Well, as those sags get worse and worse and worse, the likelihood of blockage increases. So, depending on how bad those sags are, we recommended, to fix them or to leave them for a while. The last picture that I kind of wanted to draw your attention to, and because I know this is, Bill Schmidl has talked about this being an issue in Hermiston. It's on 226, I believe. So this pipe right here, you see all this white stuff? That's all grease. Hermiston in general, according to my conversations with Bill and some of the other sewer department members, grease is bad because grease just slowly builds up over time, and unless you can really get something down there to really scour that out, it causes blockages. We just had one recently where one of the restaurants got their line cleaned. They chunked out all this grease. All that grease went downstream and kind of all congregated in one spot, blocked it up, and the sewer started boiling out of the manhole right there. So going forward in the future, I think Bill's kind of going to try to push to have some methods for restaurants and other things to maybe have some more ability to trap grease and things. That's another conversation for another time. Mostly I just wanted to bring you that was part of the study is, yeah, we found a lot of grease in quite a few of the lines. The last thing that I kind of wanted to bring up and show was this map right here. And this map's it looks similar to the other map. It's a little bit more simplistic in that these bold green lines are what we call the trunk lines. They are the really big lines that carry the vast majority of your sewage. Here's your treatment plant, so you can see there's basically 2 main trunk lines, one that goes onto this side of the city, and the other one that goes onto this side of the city, with little branch trunk lines coming off of those. The red lines are lines that we think would be good routes for future expansion for trunk lines. So as development happens out here, we anticipate eventually trunk lines going out in that direction. Or south of the city, as the hayfields develop, we anticipate a trunk line coming out here. But this serves as a good planning document to kind of get a grasp on, okay, what are we going to look like over the next 20 years? Excuse me. We also have little identified low spots. That's what these are right here. Those are lift stations, which basically says, hey, sewer can't flow uphill. So we have to install a lift station, which is essentially a pump that pumps it from low ground to high ground so it can keep flowing downhill. There's one right there, and there's another one that, if should development occur, will go in out here. So that's kind of, there's a lot more to it. I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but that is in a nutshell what the collection system has done. There's a lot more. We analyzed you know, lines for capacity issues. So even if they were in good condition, it's like, are they big enough? We looked at, okay, what are the conditions of the lines? Where is future development going to happen? And what came out of this actually, and it's already in our capital improvement plan that Mr. Morgan's had us put together. We have 10 plus projects of things that, you know, we can be using our income base to be fixing. And that's one of the brilliant things, I know kind of painful in the utility increase prices that happened a couple years ago, but one of the benefits of that is that, hey, some of these lines that have very obvious issues, we're going to be able to get on top of that before they become a Sunday night crisis problem. That's the hope of this study, is to just keep us going. The other really good thing about this, and this is, I can't say this for a lot of jurisdictions, but we're not going to have to go into debt to do a lot of this stuff. We're going to be able to save for it and pay for it with essentially the money that, you know, we had, and not have to go borrow something from somewhere or get a loan or a grant from someone. So that's a huge win right there, not having to go into debt and pay interest on projects. So with that, is there any questions that the council has for me?
Yeah, so this chart here indicates it's also a planning document, right? Those would like to have developed kind of
Yes.
issues.
Yes, this
Are most of those developments part of a system development charge or fee, like when housing developments go in, that's where you would plan to put those, and they would pay for those costs rather than the ratepayers? Am I asking the right question?
Yeah, I might defer
Mark?
to Mr. Morgan on this one.
Yeah, so if you look up approximately right where the cursor is, the little hand right there, we worked in conjunction with Hermiston School District and a private housing developer here back a couple of years ago, knowing that the Hermiston School District is going to be putting in Loma Vista Elementary out at Theater and 10th, also knowing that you can see the green line kind of below this cursor there, it kind of makes several jogs up through there. There's currently no homes, and there's a couple that are in the process of being built, but we knew that the school going in out at that intersection at 10th and Theater, right where his cursor is now, was, you know, if not for putting the school district in conjunction with that developer, all of that cost would have fallen to the school district, or vice versa, the developer would have had to do that. So knowing these types of things are out there, it allows us to work with developers to kind of come together and have the school district, even though they weren't turning dirt yet and didn't have the funds on hand a couple of years ago, they worked with that private developer to extend that sewer main. That's why it shows that there's a sewer main all the way out there to 10th and Theater right now, even though there's not an elementary school there currently. So having these types of things allows us to be proactive and allows property owners and future developments to kind of work those deals. So if we have a real priority project that we can know that we're going to be collecting system development charges, things like that you've mentioned, we can funnel some of those funds to projects like this.
Most of the rates that the taxpayers are paying currently, that's going to fund old infrastructure and old infrastructure repair, right? We aren't putting a lot of funds into future development.
Correct, yeah, and so I always make sure that I remind everybody to go to hermistonprojects.com, and you can see our capital improvement plan broken down, easily accessible, and so you can go to the wastewater segment and you can see those next 5 years of planned projects. Mr. Lott mentioned the worst of those lines being right there next to McDonald's, and so in our next fiscal year's budget, we are planning to fully replace that sewer main, because that is one of the #1 biggest issues on our known bad lines list. So you can see at this stage of the game, pretty much all of the planned projects for the next 5 years on the sewer side of things are purely existing system replacement. Some of them, you know, so things like, I think we'll be replacing 3 or 4 lift stations over the next 5 years. Those are some opportunities where, okay, we have a 40-year-old lift station that we know needs to be replaced because it's old, but now that we have, you know, a full system, future system plan, we can know, okay, we're replacing this because it's old, But at the same time, we know that there will be future system expansion out in this area, so we can maybe upsize it and take some of those opportunities to upsize it. So some of those do include a little bit of system expansion, but it's mainly because we're replacing things that need to be replaced in the first place.
Yeah, look forward to that Elm 395 project. That should be fun.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Myers, do you have your hand up?
You asked my question.
Okay, please do. How about other questions from the council? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
And I should also just mention, one of the other things that came out of this is the lines close to City Hall and the alleyways right now are being replaced as part of that City Hall project. And those are vitrified clay pipes, if any of you even know they used to make sewer out of clay. So they don't do that anymore. Yep. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So, Mr. Smith, tonight we're looking to approve this resolution as a planning document for the next 20 years for our wastewater collection system.
That's correct, and like Mr. Lott said, or maybe it was Mr. Morgan, but just DEQ requires us to have this planning document before we can apply for any programs that they might have to help us with funding. So.
Well, I would entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2178.
So, second.
I'm going to give it to Ms. Davis this time. Motion by Ms. Davis, second by Councilor Spicer Kuhn to adopt resolution 2178. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Motion passes 8-0, and I realized right in the motion that I didn't ask for public comment. So is there public comment that would like to be made? Thank you. Thank you for not embarrassing me. All right, so we're going to move on to March 2021 financial report, Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'll turn the time over to Mr. Kay.
Mr. Kay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mayor, Council. I appreciate coming before you again for the 9th month of this fiscal year. March 21. HURA is getting more money than we budgeted. I'm not sure I would expect that to happen, but we apparently have a lot of building going on in the district, and we're seeing the benefit of that coming on the tax rolls this year. I project, I think, roughly a $300,000 number for next year, so we're having property taxes come on the rolls in the district. It's helping the revenue growth. Looking at general fund resources, actual revenue for March was $461,000. We had projected, again, our projections are based on a 3-year average for that particular month, weighted. So we projected $331. We came in 130 more than that. We have some service charges and some other things that came in that were probably not in prior months for whatever reason, I don't know. We're looking pretty good as far as revenue on the year. I think what I see in the trend from all the different fees and charges we collect, we're kind of coming back to normal. I'm not ready to say we're going to be back to normal by the end of the fiscal year or even going into the first part of fiscal 22 in July. But the signs say I think we have bottomed out on our revenue process. So I'm hopeful that that will continue. Let me keep up with my notes here. On the expenditure side, I can't commend all the department heads enough in the general fund. They have done a yeoman's job spending only on mission critical. I don't want to get complacent with the America Recovery Act. That's money that's coming to us at some point. There'll be a discussion about that later. I think we still need to focus on making sure we spend money wisely, and that means mission critical. You'll see at the bottom here, we've had an expense reduction. I don't know why it keeps going off. There we go. Stay put. We've had an expense reduction of over 10% of our projected expenditure year to date. I hearing aids don't shut off like that. But that's okay. We're doing well on expense reduction. I always highlight where the well is placed. I might mention court is paying attention to their expenses. They're actually putting in a new system that they're going to save a little money on. We also have obviously pool savings as well as recreation because we didn't spend money last summer or in the spring. That will change in the coming months. I'm hopeful that we will be able to go full bore on a lot of things this spring, including the pool. And then again, kudos to the police department and chief's leadership that they are able to continue to achieve great numbers in savings in their department. This is the chart that shows where we are in the general fund. We are above the minimum requirement by $2,398,000, or 1.5 times the minimum required reserve. I will always have a concern in the shoulder months going out of the fiscal year into the new fiscal year. This is something that City Manager Smith and I and a couple of other people, Mr. Morgan, are working on to try to get something in place to where we do not have to worry about that meeting the minimum reserve requirement. Having some sort of stabilization reserve, that's for future discussion. But right now, I think we're in good shape. I'm not too worried. I think we'll get through it okay. Here's the utility street funds report. Everything's looking good. There's a little, what I consider to be a regional water fund kind of seasonal lag as far as where they're getting their revenues. I can't say that exactly. I didn't have a chance to call with Mr. Roy and make sure that that presumption is correct, but it's only 8% of revenues down now on the total year. I think that's not bad. Everybody else is looking good. And then our capital projects report, the Ridgeway water line, you've probably seen the cut right into Hermiston Ave, doing the work up there. We haven't seen a lot of bills on that yet. We're going to start seeing them this month and into May. The well number 6 backup generator, not a lot of expenditures at this point in time. Lift station 3 upgrade, not a lot of expenditures, nor in the 7th Street sewer replacement. They just let that bid at $596,485, right below the $600,000 projected. Amazing how that works. So there will be some expenditures showing up in the next few months. Most of the expenditures to date have been engineering, and now we're actually doing the work. And finally, what we consider other capital projects, the airport apron rehab, that's going to start pretty quick in the next 2 months, I believe, if I remember my discussion with Assistant City Manager Morgan. The design engineering started in July, and they'll probably get busy here in the next 45 days, getting out there and making big piles of stuff. Riverfront Park rebuild, we are at the point that now we're just waiting to begin process of relocating the parking lot and play structure to the higher ground. Library renovation, in my mind, for all intents and purposes, is complete, except we still have some outstanding bills that we're not going to have in hand anytime soon. But I'm sure that will clear up over the next 60 days. New City Hall, we got our first big bill. If you've been by there, you've seen the old City Hall's down. We have a big hole in the ground with a whole lot of dirt. And Mr. Morgan tells me they have a use for all that dirt. And if you've been around City Hall construction site at all, you've seen truck after truck after truck hauling it off. But we've gotten our first big bill from Griffin Construction. And finally, Funland rebuild, they're still working. The update is we're on track for I believe, July 4th opening of Funland. And with that, I'd be glad to stand any questions the council has.
Councilor, any questions on the financial report? Any public comment on the financial report? Well, thank you, Mr. Kay.
Thank you, sir.
Can I get a motion to accept the March financial report as presented?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Burrow. No, Councilor Harden. That we approve or accept the financial report as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Motion passes unanimously 8-0. Mr. Smith, the American Rescue Plan Fund discussion.
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I've talked a little bit about in the past, the funding that's been dedicated to cities out of the $1.9 trillion economic stimulus bill passed by Congress and signed by President Biden. There is $3.6 million right now is still the number as far as everything we've seen from the Treasury Department that we will be allocated. The timeline for that is first it will be split into 2 separate payments. The first one, we anticipate it could be as early as this June that we would receive it. As I was reviewing the documents, it looks like the state has an opportunity. They can apply for a delay up to 180 days of passing that on. So I don't know, I haven't heard from the state if they're going to try to, if they need to take advantage of that for any reason, but that could delay the transfer of the funds. What we wanted to just have a discussion tonight with the council about is kind of what would we target these funds to be used for within the city. And something I forgot to mention, the state is getting a large allocation, and right now in the budget discussions that we're hearing, they are planning to dedicate a large amount of that to be utilized potentially by cities or counties or other local governments within the state for various programs. And so some of our discussion tonight is really that we, as we've discussed this internally, we would like to recommend, or we're going to recommend that we kind of take it a little bit slow, that we don't rush out immediately and spend this like I've seen some of my kids, as soon as they get $1, they want to go to the candy store. We're not going to recommend that. We want to hold that a little bit because we think we can maximize that by potentially matching grants from the state. There's also a lot of discussion in Congress about a potential infrastructure package that we could, again, partner some of these dollars that we've been allocated into those things and maximize the use of them in various projects. But what I wanted to kind of talk with you about is some ideas, some of the areas, major areas that we've talked about, and see if there's something that we're missing, if there's other ideas that the council has as we come into the next fiscal year. We can start talking a little bit more in detail. So first, some of the areas, Mr. K mentioned one of those areas is, we lost, right now our estimates are somewhere around $800,000 in revenue since the pandemic has hit, mostly in fees to Parks and Rec, the pool, other things like that. We'd like to take a chunk of that and put it back into the general fund and have it be what we might call a stabilization fund, or something that it helps us get through those lean months, basically from June to November, where we have struggled in the past to sometimes to meet our general fund balance requirements. And so that's one of the ideas that we'd like to do. We've also, we want to utilize some of these funds to assist the community. So a couple of those ideas that we've looked at are to kind of follow an idea that we've seen in other communities. Take a good chunk of that and work with Capco, because they already do a lot of work with those who might need utility assistance. but take a chunk of that, give it to them as a kind of a seed, and then work with a group of the local churches who also I know help a lot of people who might be struggling with utilities, and ask them to contribute to that and really kind of start a rolling fund. And then we can budget a smaller amount each year out of our utility fund to help replenish that and continue to help that fund to grow and to help those people that are struggling. And so that's one of the ways that we would like to utilize this as a way to help the community. Another we've talked about is potentially targeting businesses that have been most affected by the pandemic. Whether that's restaurants or, and this again could be a great partnership opportunity. We've done it already a couple of times with the county to partner with a program with them or something like that. And so, again, there's some targeted funds in the state package that they might be looking at. So potentially we could, again, maximize the amount of money that we could make available to our businesses. And then another area, infrastructure projects. We've been working for the last probably year to 18 months on a West County Trail project with all of the Western Umatilla County communities and Umatilla County. Is this a time that we could maximize, go after a grant from the Department of Transportation and be able to put it in a segment of that trail that is envisioned to go from Umatilla to Echo. And so that's one of the projects we've looked at. One of the projects that showed up on the map that Josh, Mr. Lott was showing us is a sewer line out by Riverfront Park. That's one of the pieces that we're not going to be able to fix as far as being prone to the flooding, is because there's not anywhere to move that septic field that will not be impacted by the river. But if there were a sewer line that was in that area, it could stop that problem from occurring on an ongoing basis and potentially provide for some longer-term development impacts in the area. We've also looked potentially at a south water tank, in our water system master plan. That's another long-term investment that we have kind of on the horizon. We're looking at some east side roadway improvements. We're trying to brand this project as the GRATE, G-R-A-T-E. So Getman Road, come on, Mark, Alternative Railway.
Getman Road Railway Alternative Transportation Enhancement. That is a great project and a great name.
It's a great project. So, but again, it's 3 or 4 phases of trying to ease some of the traffic congestion that comes through the middle of the city, give it an alternative route, and so free up capacity in other places that are already impacted, particularly the intersection at Highland and First Street, or First Place. Then another, one of the goals from the council goal setting was broadband expansion, broadband investment by the city, and how we can do that in a way that would help the community. So we are, looking at, I know there's a lot of that money targeted towards that, and so trying to see, again, how we can utilize that which we've been given to help maximize the amount that we can put into a project. So then economic development wise, looking at a couple of different things. So the South Hermiston Industrial Park, we have the first phase that will be under construction this summer, but a second phase, it would be to make an additional connection out to the highway from Penny Avenue, extend Penny. So we're looking at the potential of could we utilize some of our dollars to match a grant, do something to be able to, again, create some more infrastructure, open up more land for development in an industrial area. And then also another, something that we haven't done in the past, but to build a shell building that could be, you know, a location for somebody to, you know, start a business, some sort of a light industrial type business that could then grow and grow into their own property, and we help some small businesses in that way. And then from a facility standpoint, we have potential phase 2 of the library. We have potentially to build out the basement of the Harkenrider Center, and then in quite a few different park development projects that we have out there that have been identified in our Parks Master Plan. So this is the brainstorming that we've done as city staff, and just trying to get ideas out there. And so, you know, our goal tonight was just to have some discussion with the council. If you missed something, are there some other areas that we should look into, and then go forward? I would anticipate that we would have to utilize an additional supplemental budget in next budget year because of the timing of when we would get these funds and the timing of potentially any infrastructure package out of Washington, D.C. We just won't know enough going into this budget whether we can, you know, what we can budget some of these funds for. So that's kind of the game plan at this point, and really happy to hear ideas and thoughts from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate all the effort and work that you and the administration have put into this very comprehensive list. There's a lot on here, a lot of really good things that we can accomplish with some of these funds, and I know that the thought went in behind that these are one-time funds. We're not creating new programs. We're creating additional burdens to the taxpayers, but just kind of creating an opportunity to invest some of those funds back into the community, back into the business that have been hurt significantly, as well as, you know, the individuals that have been affected by the COVID. In working with CAPCO in the past, do we have some sort of accountability or some sort of report back from them as far as how we've donated money before and it's been utilized on the west end? And all that?
Yes, absolutely. This last CARES Act funds, we were able to partner with them, and they were able to give us a monthly report of who was receiving funds and show us the addresses. And if we wanted more detail, we could have gotten it from them. So it was I was very pleased with how well it went.
Good. Well, I know that they're a great community partner, and you know, great system already in place that we don't have to create our own system, and so working through partnerships like that. We also have some significant long time frames that we can use this in. It's like 3 years.
Right, 2024 is the end date, so we have a little more time to kind of think about it and plan it out, and not, again, have to go buy the shiny new thing right now. So that's why we're not recommending that we budget specifically what we're going to do as we bring you the proposed budget in a few weeks.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective too, and kind of waiting to use these resources until, you know, the federal and state and county money has been fully allocated, and see where the partnerships can align with our local communities regionally as well as countywide, because I think there'll be some opportunities for some paired resources to work together on maybe accomplishing some of these projects. You know, I know that we were asked by the state recently to come up with some of our wish list ideas for the legislature. They're trying to allocate $2.6 billion of the American Recovery Plan Act. They got $30 billion in requests, so I'm not sure they're going to be able to fund all of the requests that were sent to them, but I know we sent some of ours to them as well, so hopefully we'll see some resources come back from that too. So,
and those projects that I listed are some of those that we did send as far as potential projects that we would like to see funded from the state.
So, all good news. How about other questions from council?
So I have one in regards to something that might be able to possibly piggyback on top of the CAPCO, something that was very much on everyone's mind, especially in the beginning of lockdown with when, the rent freeze, if you will. And so eventually that's going to end, and people are going to have to start paying all that stuff back, and, how that's going to be handled is, this point, there's no guessing. And so just kind of have that in our heads of like, if they're going to be, again, not expecting us to obviously like, oh yeah, we're going to pay everything back, because that's a bit much. But maybe kind of keep in mind, what areas were impacted, especially in the beginning days. What, like the food bank cases that were really stepping up and helping out, so that maybe at this point their reserves are really low. And by propping them up, especially as other things get unfrozen and people get back into the work world, that they're going to need to get up and going again themselves. So then that way, when the wheels start spinning, everything's free.
That's great. That's a good idea.
Other councilors? Yeah, Councilor Brewer.
I just really wanted to echo city staff's work on this and your comments as well, Mayor. I think it is fiscally prudent on us to wait to see if anything comes from an infrastructure federal bill that looks like it's still in the works. The state legislature still has to shell out the money, so I think being able to wait and see approach, and we have that ability to wait and see because of how our departments have been with their spending. And so I think for sure, we've talked about the stabilization of the general fund. That should be a priority. But everything else after that, I feel that we should wait and see, have a wait and see approach to see what happens with any other programs that might come down the line, maybe even partnering with the county. I know that Getman has been something with county and city. Maybe that's something that city and county can work together. City and state could work together. So I think it would be intelligent on our part to wait to see what we could do to maximize those funds, as city staff said. So thank you so much for this comprehensive report. It's everything I've seen and more. So this is great. So thank you, city staff.
Other comments from Councilor? Yes, Councilor Mines?
Thanks for all that you've done on this. It's a very good report. Food banks. Hermiston does not have a very visible food bank like many other cities do. And I don't know if we could partner with some other groups, organizations, whatever, but I really think that we need a much more visible, easily accessed type of a facility to get food.
Yeah, I know that the Agape House really provides that function, but I would agree. I mean, as I came in and people would ask, I really didn't know that they were the food bank because they don't call themselves that.
Right.
So potentially we could help them figure out a way to make that more visible in the community.
Right, just get the word out there that, if you're in need, that's where you go.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you also include local churches, because there's lots of other local churches that do food bank gifting throughout the week and provide meals for people and clothing and shelter as well. So trying to identify the best use of those resources to get them to the neediest of our community.
And then the idea of, transparency, having a place where people would be able to see, okay, here's how that fund is being used, oh, and hey, that's something I could use. And then having direct access to it. So they can say, like, okay, so this money is going to that, see, that's a program I can qualify for.
Right.
And then having direct links to it. So that way people, when they ask, well, how's that getting spent, they're like, oh, it's on the website, or you can find it in this other area.
Council, any other comments? Yes, Mr. Turner.
I do believe, though, that we do, it is going to be important that we keep our businesses in mind. They provide the service, they provide things that everybody, needs. If for nothing else other than their mental well-being, being able to get out of the house, do the things they need to do, be human. opposed to a hermit in their house. So, you know, propping these businesses back up, helping them get is going to be important to return to our normal lives. And so I think we need to keep the businesses that have struggled so much during this in the forefront as well.
I would agree with Councilor Kermer and the comments that were made earlier. It seems like maybe some of those top three things that you've identified on here, obviously the stabilization of our general fund balance, would be a good priority, but also the assistance that we can get out to the community in the form of business support or personal family support. Maybe we look at speeding those allocations up sooner. If we can find partnerships with the county, great, and the state, great, and maximize those dollars. But the sooner they get those dollars, I think the better. And then we can look at long-term wise, the rest of those. I think we've got time on the rest of it, but those top three, I think, sooner rather than later is
I think we might be still at the point in our budget development we can put some of those things in there in place. And the one thing I didn't mention that I meant to is the second half of that 3.6 comes a year later, so we would be looking, in our next budget to be spending that. And so then we would have a better idea of the different things that we would want to prioritize at that point.
very good. Any other comments from the council? Mr. On?
Yes, the other things that I maybe would like for you guys to consider is the warming station. A lot of they offer such a great service for those that don't have a place to live, and often, they rely on a lot of the donations. And also our very own Christmas Express. We know that this last Christmas, or December, they had a hard time also, getting donations. A few organizations kind of stepped up, but if it had not been for them, I think it would have been a tough year for us. So, I don't know where we will be with the pandemic and how, with the schools, I don't know what that's going to look like, but it would be important for us to also consider the Christmas Express.
Very good. I think you add those to the list, I'm sure.
Yep.
Other comments from council? No, it's good to see all the work and effort that the administration has put into this, the thoughtful action that you put behind it, all very worthy recommendations and key uses of the ARPA funds. So look forward to that conversation and continue to look at partnerships with our county and our state to maximize our resources. Anything else on that, Mr. Smith?
That's it. Thank you for thanks for the discussion and your comments.
Okay, so we have no action on that. That was just more of just a report. Now we're on committee reports. Councilors, do you have any committee reports? You were pointing at Ms. Meyer. Oh, Mr. Barone, you're first.
All right, we had a Hispanic Advisory Committee on the 19th. We were introduced to our new committee member, Julia Munoz. So she comes from us from the Migrant Education Program and brings a wealth of experience in the community, so it's great to have her. She says she's serving over 700 families, so just the need and the connections that she has is really important and vital to what she brings to the Hispanic Advisory Committee. So, and more representation. We have another female on the committee, which is great. Other than that, we had 2 school board candidates present themselves, which is great. The last meeting we had Commissioner Dan Doran present himself, and then this last time we had candidate Sally Hansel and candidate Lily Gomez present themselves before the committee. So another great opportunity for the community to get to know the candidates out there, and really great on the candidates for coming to a Hispanic Advisory Committee. It shows, at least it shows to our committee that it's really important that the Hispanic community is very important, and it's great to see that they're making their presence known and trying to do everything for all of our community. Other than that, there was an announcement for vaccination site. It's actually going to be at the Catholic Church on April 30th and May 1st from 5 to 8. I think this is great work. This is from OHSU, very targeted, and so I think meeting people where they're at in order for, especially for the Latino community, a place where they feel safe, a place that they feel comfortable in, a place that they feel familiar with. Sometimes going into large institutions or just institutions they're not really familiar with can be enough for them not to show up or just not to participate. So I think this is a great effort for HSU to come to our community and meet them where they're at. So other than that, I believe that's it. Did I miss anything? That's all I got.
So I got a question for you, though. You were appointed to the governor's regional solutions committee.
Yes, I was. Yes,
Congratulations. So when's that first?
We actually had our first meeting earlier this week on, sorry, this is Monday, holy cow. We had it on Thursday. So that was our first meeting. And in that meeting, we had the governor's 10-point economic recovery plan. And in it, I was really pleasantly surprised because in there, supporting resilient rural communities is one of the top agenda items. So I'm more excited rather than surprised because it's at the top of the list. So in there, it's supporting the agricultural economy, investing in community colleges, knowing what's been going on with BMCC and also the prison program. And so I think that's a really great target, as well as supporting local governments through economic development, and of course implementing forest health strategies and a couple others. I'll make sure to send this to council, but really excited to be a part of that group, and look forward to reporting to council more information as it comes by.
Congratulations, that's a pretty prestigious appointment. I appreciate your service and your willingness to do that. I know we're also represented by Jose Garcia, right?
Yes.
The Hispanic Advisory Committee, chair of that committee, so well represented in Hermiston, and Representative Bobby Beatty from ECHO is also on that committee. So our region should be pretty well represented, but it encompasses a pretty wide swath of Eastern Oregon, from Ontario all the way to like Arlington.
Yes, I think it's Grant, Harding, Malheur, Umatilla, Morrow, Gilliam, and Gila counties.
So Hermison's got some great representation on there, so thank you for your willingness to serve. Maria, did you have a comment on the Hispanic Advisory Committee?
Yes, we also had Frank Thomas from the Oregon Department of Transportation, and he pretty much talked about House Bill, I believe it's 2139. But basically, he gave kudos to the area because of the caravans service that Good Shepherd Hospital provides. He said that our area is the highest performance vet program in the entire state. So that's pretty huge, I guess, for us. So that's what we talked about.
Cool. Other committee reports? Mr. Primer?
Yes, we had the Public Safety Committee meeting tonight prior to the council session. During that, Chief Hermiston introduced his newest sergeant. Leonard Stoko was chosen to be the newest sergeant, replacing Sergeant Parsons, who departed law enforcement. I had the honor of being part of that process, and it was a really good process. I was very impressed with the way it was put together, and it worked out really well. He also brought forward a couple of his new officers who just returned from the academy, Zumwalt and Rodriguez. Correct? Yes. Yeah. And they came to the ranks as from the reserve program, which is really what that program is how it kind of works the best in the case. And he also brought up Lieutenant Studebaker's new appointment to a children's task force. Chief, can you talk about that one just a little bit?
Yes, so Lieutenant Studebaker was appointed to the Oregon Department of Justice's Children Justice Act, so CJA Task Force. He was appointed on April 8th by the Deputy Attorney General, and Randy's very involved in all things children, specific to victims, kids that are victims. And so Randy's on the board, currently on the board for the Guardian Care Center in Pendleton, And this will be great to have a voice from Eastern Oregon to be a part of this task force.
Thanks, sir. And he brought forward, the personnel update, the movements and stuff that's going on within the department, provided us with the crime statistics. We've had a drop in overall crime in the area. It's a very encouraging view. Of course, just like everything having to do with 2020 and 2021, there's a little asterisk next to it. So as we move forward, he also brought forward his report on the transient activity. Basically, 18% of calls for service are involving transients in one form or fashion or another. So it's it continues to be an issue, but it's they're dealing with it the best they can with the resources that they have available to them. Anything else I could add?
The 66% decline in crime and 70% decline in burglary, was it?
Yes.
Yes. Was quite impressive. Yeah. Stay home.
That's because everybody right? It's awesome. Congratulations to Sergeant Stocco. Any other committee reports? No. Okay. We move on to the mayor's report. I don't know if you guys saw today, but the census data came out. Oregon's population is up 11.4%, I believe. Nationally, I think we're up 7.4 or something. So 4% above the national average. We will gain an additional representative seat. California will lose one. So you can correlate those two, I think, probably. So we look forward to, it was just kind of gross numbers at this point, not any specific locale numbers, so we don't know Hermiston or Umatilla County numbers yet, but we're getting some census numbers, which are super important, and I look forward to where Hermiston lines up and all of that too. And that'll also help in aid in redistricting that's going on across our state. It's good to see some bipartisan leadership down at the legislature and splitting up that committee equally so that everybody has a fair chance to participate in that conversation as we look to change districts and add additional representatives. So good to see some functional government going on. Vaccine. One of the things I'd like to comment with the community is that we now have vaccine for anybody essentially 16 and over who wants it. And there are appointments out there not being filled, unfortunately. And so greater than 50% of the state population has received the vaccine. However, in Umatilla County, our numbers are below that. And unfortunately, not everybody is taking the opportunity to get vaccinated. We have seen a fourth wave, they're calling it, in COVID spike. And it's younger, and it's non-vaccinated people. And those people that are showing up in hospitals are all unvaccinated. And so I would encourage you, I would encourage the community, I've got it, I've had the vaccine. It's something that we can all do to participate and help bring those numbers down. Keep our businesses open, keep our kids going to school. I think unfortunately if you saw the governor's press conference on Friday, she kind of imminently warned if numbers go up above 300 in hospitalizations, which it did today, she's going to roll back openings. So I expect some of the counties to roll back into extreme and Umatilla County to roll back into high. We had a phone call with her yesterday. I think there were 65 mayors on a phone call yesterday. Essentially it was the same thing as a phone call on Friday. Just kind of, I think, preparing us that tomorrow she's going to come out with a press release and it's going to say there's no longer a 2-week wait period because we have to act now because what's happening is that our major metropolitan hospitals, beds are being taken up by the COVID patients and they're starting to run out of facilities for those individuals. And so there's some concern about this fourth wave creating some problems for our hospitals and the doctors and all the providers that take care of COVID patients. So if I could encourage the community to once again step forward in this and help yourselves out, help your businesses out, get your vaccinations if and when you have the access to it, which everybody should have access to it now. Please take advantage of it if you haven't already. Senator Wyden is having a town hall for Umatilla County on May 2nd, which is a Sunday, at 11:30 a.m. and it's via Facebook, and so you can participate online through that. You can send in questions or ask them in the chat. I would encourage you to participate in that, as well as pay attention to what's going on down in Salem. There are some actions and stuff that are going through. LOC has a great job of keeping track of over 4,000 bills and making recommendations for cities based on what's best for cities. They stay out of the partisan stuff, but the stuff that's impactful to communities and could have negative impacts, they sent that alert today. I acted on it. I sent a letter to our representative. So if you get those emails, if you don't get those emails, you can get email updates by adding your email to their alert system. But I got an alert today. There's a bill coming through, passed by the Senate. It's now in the House on wages, prevailing wages, and which could be extremely impactful to city governments, school governments. Our community has over $100 million in construction projects over the next couple of years. And if we saw significant increases in wages, that could impact the quality and the breadth of the projects that we're putting forward. And so we support prevailing wage. We just don't support the process by which they're going to trying to mandate that all prevailing wages are essentially Portland prevailing wages. They used to be localized, I think 6 districts across the state. That's the way the state way it is currently. And so it's regionalized prevailing wages. So, our region would have a different prevailing wage than, Portland, for instance. And so that could be an extreme increase in cost to our district. Am I accurate in that comment?
Yeah, I think that the major changes, they use an average right now of, for example, electricians, if they're working on a public job, use an average rather, but what the bill would do is make it the highest and that's within the region in the survey, and that the irony, I guess, is they tried it in Washington, and Washington didn't work very well. In fact, they changed it the next year, and they're under litigation over the effects of it in the 1 year it was in place. So they're trying to help the legislature see that this might not be the best path, but we'll see.
So that's just one example of what your LOC intergovernment relations team, there's 5 of them that are working for you down there at Salem. And so paying attention to those bills that have an impact to your community and talking to your legislators about that. They want to hear from the constituents, and you represent the constituency. They hear from the administration all the time, but when they hear from the constituents, I think it's very impactful. So make sure that you're participating in that process. I think it's important. Yuma County Fair dates. You guys all got a card tonight in front of you. Make sure that if you can, attend the appreciation dinner, May 15th. Does everybody get it? No, just me. Oh, I'm the only one that So May 15th, 2021. No, I know you all get invited to the appreciation dinner, but it'll be up at the Biotech. Hopefully, we'll all be able to attend, assuming our numbers come back down. The other thing I had questions about, Mr. Smith, that I was a little concerned about from last city council meeting was the green property. And so we put that on the table, and then what happened? Can you explain that to me a little bit?
Yeah, so after we went through the process, selected a potential developer, basically after the meeting, the last meeting, they had some conversations internal to their company as well as with some of the other providers that were here, and they withdrawn from the project. So at this point, we as staff, like to have a little time to regroup and rethink about how we would propose we might move forward with the green property and what we might propose that we do on the goal as far as trying to impact the senior housing supply in our community.
Is it Paradigm?
Paradigm Compass is the name, yes.
Did Paradigm Compass express concern by the action of the council, or did they feel like they needed to do more due diligence? I mean, what was their feedback that they provided you?
It seemed like they, maybe they were able to verify at some level some of the information that was provided by their competitors, and that maybe they felt like they needed to relook at their market study, and maybe it wasn't as accurate as they thought. That's kind of the best I can get from their conversation with us.
So, no feedback about the council and their concern or tabling it or anything like that?
No, I mean, I think it impacted that, I mean, but they didn't express any frustration or anything in particular about that.
Mr. Morgan, so the council asked you to do this, right? We asked you to look at the green property. We asked you to try and figure out some solutions for the green property. How many hours you got into this?
I figure probably about 150 hours, which is about $15,000 to $20,000 of staff time.
And so I think, the council has to be really clear about when we ask administrators, when we ask the staff to do something, that we fully vet that before it comes to an open forum to have that conversation. And that we're asking those questions ahead of time, that we're asking, doing our due diligence, because the amount of effort and time that the administration puts into a project like this, I think it's important that we show support for that, and that we understand that they've kind of fully vetted that and they fleshed it out and tried to present it in a positive manner, especially when we've asked them to do this. I know Councilor Spicer Coon sat on the process, as well as some other members of the community, to bring this forward as a valid consideration of that property. And I was frustrated from the standpoint that we had an organization willing to spend or invest $4 million plus in a property that is bringing no value to the community, and that's lost taxpayer revenue as well as resources for water and sewer and electrical that could have went back into the system. And so I'm frustrated that it fell apart. I'm hopeful that we can bring something back together, but I also think the council needs to provide some clarity on if that's really what they want to have happen with that property, so that someone like Assistant Manager Morgan is not spending any more time investing in that property if that's not what the council is prepared to support. Because you're always going to have critics, you're always going to have a competitor come forward and tell you something contrary to the opinion of trying to keep competition out. And I think it's unfortunate that we kind of bent to that will and didn't allow that process to move forward. They had plenty of time to work out the due diligence of whether this was going to work or not, but we kind of caved to that pressure, and I feel we need to show better support for the administration in that process. And so I would like to see the council come up with, do you feel comfortable with that's the direction we want to go, or do we need to go down a different pathway with that property? Any comments about that? Mr. Brown?
Yes, Mayor. Unfortunately, I was not present at the last city council meeting, but just like you, I also had questions regarding the outcomes and the discussion that ended up happening. I echo your comments, and I would like to move forward with a potential project on that. We've looked at the information, we've talked about it in a goal-setting session, and we've been through all the nuances and different options. So I would like to entertain having that discussion open again, but I also know that that might come at a later time, but I would like to continue moving forward with that project.
Others comment? Ms. Davis?
I agree with Councilor Brown, move forward, and the surplus issue wasn't an issue for me as far as the property being surplus or given to the developer. So I wanted to revisit the proposal that went out to the companies. There was one of the proposals that showed just a kind of like a whole bunch of empty lots, or I mean there was just like an idea, a suggestion. Maybe Mark knows what I'm talking about. It was kind of I kind of like that idea. I don't know if there's ways to move forward and more of a 55 and plus housing. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay. Councilor Meyer?
That was the direction that we chose to go. And it's very unfortunate that the whole thing fell through at the last minute when it didn't have to happen that way.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo, I was very frustrated with the way things happened and that it didn't move forward. I do think Mr. Morgan put in a lot of work and the city put in a lot of work putting that plan together, putting out the proposals, going through the proposals, getting more information, and finally reaching one that they agreed on was the best for the site. I wish we had a little bit more foresight and acted a little bit more quickly so we could have taken advantage of that opportunity.
Ms. Peterson?
So I was the one that initially asked for the opportunity to table the discussion for 2 weeks. And my reason for doing that was a couple of reasons. One is we had community concerns that I felt that if we didn't take a moment to stop and address them, then it was showing a government that was not necessarily being responsive to what the community was bringing. And I wanted to make sure that we were being seen as such, that we were in fact saying, okay, well, have we answered the question? Are we being given new information that we have or have not considered? And that might have been, you know, part of the fact that, yeah, maybe I missed a few things. So I tried to keep up and, you know, stay on board with all of the developments. I also had an issue with, you know, that we had to be given a report and been told, okay, here's what it says, without being given an opportunity to read it. And I've always learned you don't sign off on anything you haven't read, especially when it's just handed to you. Now, we asked for 2 weeks, and they pulled out after 2 weeks. And my concern then is that if they were truly invested in the idea, then 2 weeks, I feel shouldn't have been that big of a reason to deviate from their plan. They were willing to invest that much, you know, money and that much time. And by asking for a 2-week delay to make sure that we were listening to our public and the people that we were going to impact, and they decided after that small sum that they were willing to pull out, that also concerns me. That kind of raises some alarms of, okay, how invested were they in this idea? I know that the committee and the city, you put a lot of hours into it. And you know, those hours are very valuable. And so if we had ended up going with someone that in the end really wasn't invested in us, and that we weren't showing that we were listening to the community and doing our due diligence, I think we were taking a risk that it was 2 weeks, and they pulled out. So how invested in us were they? So that's my concern. And are we making sure that when we ask the public to come up and make comments, and then we don't take the time to think about those, are we doing what we were hired to do? And again, we asked for 2 weeks.
Other comments from the council? Yes, Mr. On?
Well, if I recall, I think there was only one of our members that did not approve the decision to postpone. And I felt like we also needed a little bit more information. I needed to ask a few more questions now. You know, looking back, I think we have to be responsive, as Councilor Peterson said. Oftentimes, the City Council has been seen as maybe rubber stamping their decisions all the time, or most of the time. And I think by us postponing it for 2 weeks, I think we had the opportunity to ask further questions, or even ask the city to provide some other reports in order for us to be able to say, look, this is what we found out, so that in case, you know, folks from Guardian Angels or other came to ask us, we were equipped to have the information that we needed to have to be able to not necessarily make our case, but to be able to present with more valuable information. And Mr. Morgan, I don't think it was our intention to not value the work that you have done thus far. On the contrary, we know that you probably have spent hours on other projects that we have seen, you know, with the sewer plan and other projects. But I think as the council, that is part of what we have to do. I will not vote on something that I don't feel comfortable if I don't have all the information that I need. Now, granted, I also think that afterwards, you know, I started thinking more and more about it. We do have representatives of the council in, you know, those committees, so I guess looking back, I also could have relied more on their expertise, you know, like Mr. Spicer Hume, if he felt comfortable then voting. And I'm sure he probably asked all of those questions that maybe some of us had, and, you know, trusting that our own members, you know, have already gone through the process. So it was a learning process for us.
Well, and the reason I asked Mr. Smith the question about was it anything to do with what the council did, I'm not sure if it was. But I think we do send a mixed message. And so the reason I wanted to have this conversation this evening is to ask the council if they're prepared to move forward with that project as proposed and presented by Mr. Morgan and the committee that sat on that project, or do we want to go a different direction with that property? And so if we don't feel like that's the right use for that property, then I would encourage them to stop looking into it. But if we feel like that's a process we want to continue to try and flesh out, see if there's somebody else out there that's willing to partner with us, or, you know, touch back with Paradigm Compass and let them know the city's still very much interested in that conversation, I think that's a different message. So I came away from it feeling like, you know, we kind of caved to competitors' voice and didn't listen as much to the people that sat in the room and fleshed out all of these conversations before it came to the council. And I think it's important too that we trust our fellow councilors. You know, you get appointed to these committees to bring forward, you know, special committees to bring back information, to partner and represent us. And we trust you in representing us. And that way, when you bring stuff back to us, we also send a message to you that we believe in your and value your time and energy that you put into it too. So I'm kind of getting the sense that this is something that still has value and that we want to pursue, at least from the majority of us. Is that the direction, or do we want to see it modified? I want to give direction to the administration of how we should move forward with this project.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think the staff did an exceptional job of working on this project, the hours that they put in, especially Mr. Morgan. And I was just a little disappointed with the presenter that this is the first time we had this document before us that we hadn't read yet, and we're supposed to, you know, and I think, I have a feeling that he caved to his competitors more than anything else. But I think it's, you know, this 55 idea as far as what we're trying to develop. It's just, I guess, I just felt pretty empty with what we were given that night. And I wasn't sure they were convinced that they'd convinced themselves yet. That's the impression I got. So, but I think definitely it's something that we need to move forward.
And I think what the council is being asked is, we would agree to continue a working relationship with Paradigm Compass to flesh this idea out further. I don't think any of us had committed 100%, we're all in. They still had due diligence, we still had due diligence. They still had to come back to the council and get something for approval. So it's just, do we want to go down this pathway? Or should we look at something different? And Mr. Morgan, do you have any comments about success of this project as far as it moving forward, or if we changed it to a 50-plus-year-old housing only kind of, community? I mean, would that be successful, or do you have any thoughts about what this looks like as an evolution of this design?
Yeah, so assisted living facilities off the table. Paradigm is not incoming. That's certain. But I will say there is definitely strong interest from the development community in looking at developing something out there. And so in our RFP/RFQ that we put out, we kind of outlined what our 4 top kind of goals and aspirations were for the project or the property, and that was senior housing, economic development / job creation, return on investment to the community, and I think fiscal prudence. And I think when you lined all of those together, something like an assisted living facility obviously scored by far the best. And so we had several strongly interested developers who were more interested in just something that really lacked like the job creation component, which would be something like just a straight either housing project or specifically a senior type housing project. So I think there's still very strong interest in the development community in developing something out there. And so I think that's certainly something that we can crank back up and see, what other type of business model that might be senior focused, if that's still something that the council wants to be focusing on, is something in that senior sector. I think there's still something that we could get to out there. And I think, again, one of the big components that we included from the very beginning on the RFP process was the fact that there would be clawback provisions as well as covenants on the property. And so I think the way that we need to look at this process moving forward, if we go with another type of developer, is that with the Paradigm deal that we were working on, basically gave them a certain amount of time to develop the property and do their due diligence. And if they didn't end up hitting that timeline, we had the option of either them turning the property back to us or compensating us for the property, in which case it would have basically turned into more like a loan of the property if they didn't reach their objectives. And I think that's still something that we can move forward on with another development. Is we're basically gaining a lot of benefit by offering the property for free, because that's basically free marketing for us. That allows us to circumvent a lot of things in terms of advertising, as well as we got a very deep insight into the local market on some of these things. And so that is really the big benefit behind offering the property for free. It allows us to kind of circumvent some of those things. So anyway, I still think that that's probably the best route to proceed on, is to regroup and relook at reissuing basically the RFP, RFQ, but with revised goals and objectives that might open it up to a broader array of different types of housing development.
How does that sound to the council? Like that idea?
Those were all of the things that led us to the conclusion that that was the best solution for that piece of land.
Seems some consensus around that. So looking at maybe reissuing an RFP and going out through the process again and kind of starting over maybe a little bit different design.
Yeah, we were kind of letting things settle down a little bit in our minds, and then we would get back to kind of figuring it out. But this is good feedback that we can kind of guide the direction that we go.
Good, very good. Thank you, council, for entertaining that conversation this evening. The one thing that the guardian angel guy, the gentleman did speak to very poignantly, I think our community is I talk to right now is hiring and just trying to find people to work right now, and especially in that environment. And I think that was part of Lifeway's failure too, is just trying to find qualified individuals and staff in the facility. And so that would have been a challenge for this new facility as well. So I think it's pretty accurate in that. I don't have anything else this evening. How about counselors? Did you have anything else you'd like to talk about? Mr. Rowe?
Yeah, I got a light story for you guys.
Okay.
So the other day, it's about our bird scooters, actually. I ended up using them. They're really fun. But just the other week, we had a baseball game in the afternoon. So I went with my significant other to go get some dinner, or some lunch, I'm sorry. And so she was leaving to go to work. She's like, lock the door, and then just go back to work. And I'm like, okay. So I locked the door. Unbeknownst to me, I leave my keys inside the house. So I locked myself out, and my car is just stuck. I don't have any spare keys. And so I'm like, how am I gonna get to where I need to go? I'm like, oh, wait, I can just use a bird scooter. So I take the bird scooter, which was a block away, and I take it from Ridgeway all the way down to the PD, get the keys, come back, unlock the door, finally get my car, and then I drive on my way. But that significantly helped me out. That way I didn't have to walk there, because I was also on a time crunch. I needed to be at the baseball field soon. So that not only helped me, it was kind of like a medium public transportation that ended up coming in really clutch. So, and it was really fun. Shout out to Bird on that.
Yeah, I see a lot of kids, a lot of and young adults using them. They look like they're a lot of fun. Chief, you got any update on success of that, or failures, or we have any issues?
No issues that I'm aware of.
Awesome. It's a great resource for our community. They seem to be stationed out in very accessible locations, readily available, and so encourage the community to start trying those out if you have them. Other comments from the council?
I know this weekend they're doing the Love My City event. I don't know if somebody can ask more information about it.
I think Ms. Smith is going to talk on a bunch of things, parts today.
Okay.
So,
Then I'll listen.
okay, anything else?
That's it.
All right, Ms. Smith?
Yeah, so a few items, mostly parks related, but this Friday, April 30th, the unleashing of the dog park, the official unleashing.
The Bark Park.
The Bark Park, I'm sorry, I missed it. 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, so if you can be there, you're welcome, please come. Then the next day, May 1st, is I Love My City event. And if you aren't associated with a group that already has an assignment, you can go to Mackenzie Park at 9 a.m. and get an assignment to go help somewhere. It sounds like they're going to have a pretty good crowd. Be spread out various projects throughout the city, so it's going to be good.
Got time on that?
9 o'clock, yeah. Then, again, as Mr. Kay mentioned earlier, a mid-June soft opening of Funland with an official July 4th grand opening is what we think, what we're planning right now for Funland. Still making good progress installing items out there. You should look at the camera, or you should go out there in person. It's amazing. There's going to be a lot of fun things to play on. And then finally, as far as parks go, Riverfront Park, we actually are waiting until our staff get done with Funland before we start to see a lot more progress. But as Mr. Kay said, we've been spending some engineering dollars getting ready to relocate the parking lot and doing those projects, and with that, working very closely with FEMA, where we're going to get reimbursed for 75% of all the costs on that. So very happy about that. And then just in a few weeks, we'll be going through the budget. So we just completed meeting with all the departments, kind of going through budget requests, and we'll be working to get the budget document out in a couple of weeks. So any other specific questions? I'm sorry?
How about the summer park and recs? We're going to have a swimming season?
Yes, the pool staff is working at getting the pool open. I actually participated in a service project to start cleaning off the chairs and all those types of things. So they're open for that. If you've got a group that'd be interested in helping, I know they have a lot of things they're trying to get done, and they're working to open the deep pool in conjunction with the school district so that the swim team has a place to swim for this spring season. So that will open first, and then the fun pool will open closer to the first part of June. So
What about swim lessons?
they will, as we're planning to have swim lessons. It might be not exactly like we've always done it, but we're trying to educate as many people, children as possible.
There will be programs this summer.
Yes. Larry's doing a lot more programming as far as outdoor camps, trying to maximize that with just kind of banking that there'll be more opportunities to be outside with the restrictions that may or may not be in place.
And EOTech, it's open.
EOTech, they've started having ropings and they've had the high school and college rodeos up there the last couple weekends. So ropings, and I'm missing the barrel racing. Thank you, Gary. But also he's been hosting some indoor events as well. So going to 25% does kind of impact his potential going forward. So I think that's it.
Budget date is set.
May 20th.
May 20th. Okay, hopefully that's on everybody's calendar, and that's 5:30 start?
Yeah, 5:30 with dinner, the meeting will start at 6.
Okay, 5:30, dinner, 6 o'clock start. All right, we do have an executive session planned for this evening. So we are going to recess for executive session. The City Council of the City of Hermiston will now meet in executive session in the Conference Center Rotary Room for the purpose of discussing matters pertaining to negotiating real property transactions. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with the person designated by the council to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are excluded. Representatives of news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No final decisions may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, the council will return to open session with the audience, which the audience may attend. The executive session will last approximately 10 minutes. Come on, Will, really 10 minutes? With this group?
It was an encouragement.
ready? All right, we're going to reconvene the Hermiston City Council session for April 26th. Anything else, Mr. Smith, for the good of the order? No. We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.